Welcome to the Digital Marketing Mentor. I'm your host, Danny Gavin, and together with industry leaders and marketing experts, we'll explore the meeting point of mentorship and marketing. We'll discover how these connections have affected careers, marketing strategies, and lives. Now get ready to get human. Hey everyone, I'm Danny Gavin, founder of Optage, marketing professor, and the host of the Digital Marketing Mentor. Today we have Ross Hudgens, founder and CEO of Siege Media. Siege Media is dedicated to helping brands scale through content, SEO, and public relations. Ross and his team have worked with Adidas, Airbnb, Audible, HubSpot, Intuit, Quicken Loans, Williams-Sonoma, and many others. Siege has been named 6 times to the Inc. magazine's 5,000 list. You can see the trophy behind Ross. They've been named to Inc.'s Best Workplace twice, fastest growing company in San Diego 6 times, tops on BuzzSumo's list. I would say Ross is also a Golden State Warriors fan. I don't know if that's good or bad, but he's not a bandwagoner because he's actually from that place. So maybe we'll talk about it a bit. And today we're going to talk about Siege, SEO, and content marketing, and of course, mentorship. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Danny. Glad we could do this.
Yeah, this is awesome. All right, so let's jump right in. Tell me more about where you went to school and what you studied.
I went to Chapman University. I originally started as a creative writing major and sold out and went to business administration with a marketing emphasis.
But I think that's very foretelling to the power. Bottom line is what you do today, a lot of it is all writing. So I would say that some of the best marketers are writers. So it doesn't surprise me, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy how I appreciate you saying that. It sort of worked out. And I was building some kind of skill set there, seemingly anyways.
Not everyone on the podcast goes to university, but the fact that you did, when you look back at that experience, both inside and outside the classroom, are there any memories, teachers, situations that were impactful in directing your path?
I don't know that I have a specific teacher or experience that stood out, but definitely appreciated my time at Chapman. It made me take schooling seriously. My grandparents used to joke that I majored in football. When I was in high school, I only had a 2.0 GPA, and I went to a junior college trying to go to Division I. But Chapman was an amazing school and kind of showed me what's possible, got me more excited about it, which I don't think my high school experience necessarily did. So a great teachers, I think generally across the board, they were solid, and that created some motivation for me for sure.
So I didn't know you were an athlete. I guess a good question would be, do you approach your company and life now at all from an athletic perspective?
I think about work ethic. You got to work hard to be good. I mean, I'm relatively tall. I'm 6'2", which you can't tell in a podcast video necessarily, or you're listening to this, but I'm not a super great athlete. So I kind of worked my way up to be successful. And I think that also I think there's an aspect of being on a team and working with others and all of that, I think undoubtedly was beneficial. I sometimes go back and forth of I should have jumped right into business, but I'm sure I would have lost some of that fortifying element. And my friends from that time are my best friends still today.
That's awesome. And I know you're a father as well. Is that something that you feel is important for your kids to be part of team sports?
I'd like that. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. That'd be fun for sure. But I definitely hear people that you don't want to force or pressure them. So I'm nervous about doing that myself. But if they would like to, I would definitely support that.
That's the right answer. So Ross, how would you define a mentor?
Mentor is someone to me who is willing to kind of help without really any other benefit to themselves. They're just willing to put themselves out there and assist you just out of the good grace of their personality, which is amazing. Very often it can fly, at least in my experience, it could be in conflict with their actual kind of business model sometimes. Been lucky to get help from people that technically compete with us, which is wild, but still we're graceful, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit.
And we'll get into who those people were, but do you feel like that's unique in our industry where just people are more willing to help, or you feel like you kind of see that in general? It just really depends.
Yeah, I think relatively, I know a lot of people say with frequency, at least other agency owners that I talk to, there's a lot of business to go around. So there's that sense that even though there is obviously there is a finite amount of business, you're not necessarily grabbing it from the same locations. And I think that kind of matters. It's all relationships and things of that nature, which allow people to lower their guards down. Well, in athletics, obviously, I wouldn't go to my competing team and share the same things, because it's so obvious the winners and losers in that case. And I think that helps a lot.
I'm part of a peer group here in Houston, Texas, and we have like 10 agencies. And it's pretty amazing that we all can sit at the table and talk and share our problems and issues and actually like help each other out. Even though technically, like you said, there is enough business, but in some hands there's not. But it's cool. I feel like it is special in the digital marketing world, a little bit more than maybe other places.
Yeah, a lot of great people generally. So I think that's part of it. Very humble, helpful people. And that's got to be part of it, to your point.
All right, so let's jump into some of your most influential mentors. So let's first talk about Will Reynolds, who has been a guest on the podcast before. And yes, I imagine a significant competitor, but let's talk about why do you consider him your mentor?
Yeah, Will, especially early on in my time at Siege, he was around 10 years in front of me, and I aspirationally respected a lot of what he did. I mean, he has his company volunteer all the time. He's selfishly, like, he's sleeping out in Philadelphia to raise money. He clearly cares about doing the right things for his clients. So that was always something I looked up to and wanted to do myself. And so just a few times I reached out to him with some like problem things, and he super graciously was willing to jump on a call with me quickly and talk about those things. That just like was shocking to me at the time. We offer similar services. To the previous convo, I don't know how often we like actually butted heads in a pitch. I'm not sure, but regardless, knowing Will, I don't think that would have mattered that much, honestly, because I think that's naturally in his DNA, is to go out and help people grow. And I was super appreciative of that.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you both at a time were both in San Diego. So were you able, did you bump into each other like face to face and therefore had maybe a better connection?
Yeah, I met him for coffee a few times. He was gracious enough to come on our podcast. Actually, our first content, we have a podcast called Content Conversation, and him and Rand Fishkin came into our office, and it was like one of my favorite podcasts to this day.
And I guess with, saying that he's like 10 years your senior, has it changed the way that you have maybe reached or treated agency owners when they reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think he kind of set the standard for what I should do and feel to people that are the same version to me. So I definitely try to be as helpful as Will was when it comes up. I think that's definitely a benefit, is paid forward, that he showed me that you're supposed to do that to the extent I can, of course. And I try to do that myself as well.
All right, let's move into Grayson LaFrenz. Tell me about your relationship with him.
Yeah, Grayson's a more recent version. I have a lot of respect for both of them. Grayson specifically is in a stage with Power Digital Marketing. He was the CEO of Power Digital. I think he's now just the chairman of the board there. They acquired several different agencies. They eventually resold after an initial sale to private equity. And he had just done a lot of things several times that I had never done in a very similar fashion. Really, for no necessary reason, he was willing to jump on a call and give me like what you could consider probably like $1,000 an hour advice on this stuff without asking for anything, which was amazing and surprising. And just stood out a huge amount, and a similar version of just paying it forward. And that's something that I appreciated. And he was also in San Diego, met him for coffee a few times, and that helped build a relationship for sure.
Were you introduced by someone, or did you just reach out?
Yeah, we had some conversations about working together from a business capacity.
Got it.
Early on. That fell through for various reasons, but maintained the positive relationship after that. So that was kind of the forming function. And of course, similarly, I'd heard of his agency in San Diego, had a lot of respect for them. And I think that because we were originally headquartered in San Diego, now we're fully remote, that I think probably brought some initial awareness to both sides.
Listing two people who are both agency founders or CEOs, I think that says a lot. Do you feel like it's important for the head of a agency, a digital marketing agency, to have a mentor who is, an agency owner from a different agency?
Yeah, I think so. There's also the variant, which we talked to, you briefly mentioned before this call. I'm in a similar thing of peer groups. You could call them a mentor, I suppose. I'm also in, I was previously in EO, I'm now in YPO, which are both kind of entrepreneur peer groups. And that's been super helpful. I wouldn't necessarily define some of them as mentors, but definitely people have done several things more than I have. And so that probably does count. So I highly recommend those. And it's good kind of mental health therapy for entrepreneurs as well, or whatever world you're in. I'm sure there's other versions of that.
Often in life, we always think that we're like on an island on our own. It only happens to us. And just to have that transparency, it helps. And it's interesting. I mentioned it to someone a couple of days ago, and like, oh yeah, like misery gets together. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. The idea is like, you don't want to just sit, at a bar drinking, and saying how horrible life is. But, the idea is find a group that, yes, your peers, but also how you can support each other, right? Let's not just complain.
Yeah, agreed. And, I mean, entrepreneurship is lonely. So there's some people that do this. I'm amazed by it, that are like super close with their coworkers as the entrepreneur or CEO of the company. That's always been a hard line for me to walk personally. So that's just how, like, you can literally only say certain things to those people, and sometimes it's venting, but there's positive stuff in there as well, like that you can't celebrate the same way with other people.
Talk about relationship with coworkers. Is that something that maybe you tried at one point and it backfired, or you've always been pretty strong about separating the two?
I wouldn't say it backfired, but I was lucky to have my good friend Kyle Floyd, who probably won't listen to this, but we went to school together at Chapman, actually. And he was our first full-time graphic design hire. And we were always good friends after that, but it just changed the dynamic a little bit. Even though he so greatly impacted Siege, I was just like, I would rather have this guy be just my friend after that. And that's coming from friend into company. But there's just a reality, like, for whatever reason, you need to make tough decisions around layoffs or performance. It's just very difficult to do that. Of course, if someone's a really high performer, that could hopefully make it a little bit easier, which is the case, but there still can be tough decisions around compensation, dynamics around those things. It's just so difficult, at least in my experience, that I wanted to keep a separation of church and state there.
Yeah, I once had a coach, he heard me using the term family, like the Optage family. And the reason, because you do feel close and we're working together in the trenches, but he called me out on it and he's like, you know what, it's difficult. In a family, there's certain things you don't do, but in business, sometimes you have to make those hard decisions. So to use that term isn't the greatest. So, more like group or team. Love your perspective on that.
Respectfully, it sounds like you're aligned with him. I would agree with that take. Like, I tried not to use that term in particular. I've heard those similar kind of echoings of that. I like the team idea. Like, we're not a family, but hopefully we can still be close knit, still be close. And I've had difficult conversations with people still relatively close with to this day. So still treat them great. And I'd rather, on the same wavelength, like, I want these people to feel like friends. Like, I want to, like, you're still spending so much time. It is your second. Somewhere, I think they say the data is you spend more time with your coworkers than your family, or maybe This was pre-remote work, but close anyways. So you better like these people. So I definitely that's still the case, but there's got to be some delineation, it seems like.
Let's talk about you mentoring others. I think you've got 2 direct reports. You've mentored other agency owners in the past. Love to know, what's your mentorship style? How do you hold people accountable? Love to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I wish I could say I'm a great manager. I think I've learned that over time. Clearly not so incompetent to be that Siege turned out decently well. As we scaled and realized that would be in better hands with our COO, Melissa, who is a much better manager than I am. My general style is trust then verify. That was Derek Sivers, who has a great blog post on that. And I think that one sentence is quite helpful. So that's generally what I try to do with the team. Hire someone great, trust and verify with them, and help them grow. I do think that was almost to my detriment as well at the beginning. Like, my gut is to want to promote people, and I instinctually always want to grow. So I assume everyone else wants to grow to be a manager or director. And I think that was not necessarily the case in some instances. So I like helping people out, and it's surprising to me But sometimes they don't want to grow in content in our SEO, and that's understandable as well.
I always think I'm not saying it's like this in every organization, but you hope like the idea of growth is sort of like vertically and horizontally, right? Like, so you could become a manager, director, like in one way, but in the other way, you could just get deeper in what you know and just be, better at SEO. It would be nice. I mean, it's not always like that in every organization, but it would be nice to have both those paths, right? So that you can still grow, but it doesn't always mean that you have to manage people. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, agreed. We did work on building those tracks. We learned some lessons there as well, where I built tracks for people that we didn't necessarily need as a company.
Mm-hmm.
And when things get leaner, that gets tougher and turns out to be a bad decision. So that's where it's like your mind to want to help people can sometimes be counterproductive for the wider company and organization. But I agree. And there's those people, and definitely try to have that conversation now that I've learned some of those things, and try to be harder. And sometimes the conversation arrives now that I have transparent conversations with people of like, maybe our company is just not going to be the growth path for you. Like, we can have a transparent conversation about that. Could help you. We're going to support you. Just like, be upfront, be professional while you're here. That's totally fine. I'm cool with that. I'd rather have that conversation than force you into something you don't want to do.
Yeah. I'm just thinking how we're like brothers from another mother. Cause I think I am definitely 10 years behind you. That same concept where it's like when you're starting out, like you just want to help everyone, every individual, because every individual is so important. And then as you're growing and scaling and realizing that not everything fits the business, sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. And when you're naturally like very, kind and giving, it's difficult. It's a difficult transformation.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. When times are good, that works very well. When times are not as good, which they haven't been in the last couple of years, those decisions come to roost generally, unfortunately. Yeah.
When did you realize that you needed like that COO? Like what stage was it? I don't know because I know you've been in business for 12 years. So number one, congratulations. That's a big deal.
Thank you. Yeah.
But like what stage was it like, hey, I'm where I'm at. I want to scale, kind of need someone senior outside of me.
So we had an operations manager. Basically, our current COO was just promoted incrementally. The trigger point to make her a COO specifically is I was just so overwhelmed with people problems. Like I was getting burnt out by this issue, that issue, this other issue. And I just hit a breaking point where I was like, I need some help on this stuff. I can't be in the weeds on everything. And I read Rocket Fuel, which I recommend. It's it's a good book that basically talks about working with a COO productively. I did that later, but that's one reason I have so few direct reports now, is it sort of models through the COO to kind of like take the vision forward with someone who's far more organized, better at working with people day to day, and can manage many direct reports. Like I've had 7-8 direct reports, I think, but eventually pulled back from that when I realized maybe it was not the best. Once you have like 90 people worth of people problems on you, it compounds for sure. It's tough.
I don't want to get into revenue numbers, but they say you get to a certain point at an agency where you're too small to be big, too big to be small. And that's like the growing pains. Profits are down. You kind of have to push through. What helped you scale?
Melissa definitely helped with a lot of those scaling functions. We just kind of did it iteratively over time. It just like there is no secret sauce necessarily. There's different incremental things I can think of. We really invested in learning and development. We were in person for a long time, and I think in-person trainings worked. And then we went fully remote, and we were like, we need to do this process doc thing. Now we have hundreds of process documents. Everything's documented. There's videos for everything, very formalized training process where every new hire we have a learning development lead now who kind of gets everyone with the same messaging in the door. That helps with consistency. I think, a lot of those things I think over time helped in delegating. I mean, I just slowly over time got better at, and I'm still not amazing, don't get me wrong, but of letting go of things. Like I was in sales for long time doing it myself. And now we have a full-time person. I still help, don't get me wrong, but that's an example of just like slowly delegating just incrementally as budget allows, and you realize there's better people for stuff.
And I got to give you credit for that, because I don't think people realize for an agency owner to like hand off the sales to someone else, like that's a big deal, right? Because often I feel like, at least in the beginning, sales go through like people know Siege, but they also know Ross, right? So it's like, to think that I'm handing it off to someone, that's pretty crazy. What's helped me, I haven't done that yet. You'll have to teach me, Ross. But I always say that for me, what helped me start with delegation is like the realization that when I hand it off to someone else, they'll most probably only be able to do what I could do 80% of the way. But you know what? 80% is going to be good enough. How do you look at delegation similar? Do you have a different strategy?
Maybe it's optimistic, but I would round up that number. I sometimes say like, you'll probably get 95% of what I would have said. Maybe that's not completely true. Maybe it is 90, 85, 80. And we'll just talk about it after. Like, you will do things that I'm not going to do, but we'll just talk about it. And it's not going to be a big deal. And I think that's the play, is you just got to do that and then be willing to invest heavily your time in that person to iteratively learn. Like, that's how it's going to, of course, process stocks scale that up over time. But that's the kind of the core component, and try to just keep the high leverage moments. Like, I do attend I was on a proposal call earlier today. Like, if I feel like it makes sense, I'll still attend calls and things of that nature. So I still think it makes sense, but the lift of like the proposal build out, the intro call, you just realize that the steps, you can touch it later and later and still have the same result like 98% of the time.
So what do you find yourself doing now? Like what are the main things that you're doing in the agency?
Kind of shifting more towards relationships. Like, was in New York, kind of meeting a big referral partner. I set up a breakfast with 10 other kind of like SEOs and marketers. Transparently, we're thinking about mergers and acquisitions with other agencies. I'm kind of working on that personally. And just bigger picture stuff, like more time. It feels weird, but yeah, more time thinking those, hopefully one or two. You make less changes as you get bigger as well. Like, it's kind of hard to push through 100 people. I'm learning, and Melissa helped me as well.
And I'm sure you're loving it. And I think that's what the CEO needs to do, because it's about, you need that space to think and be creative and come up with those game changers. All right, let's pivot into SEO and link building. First of all, do you like the term link building these days?
We use it less and less. Yeah, I mean, we're calling it, it's always been content marketing for us, but I feel like we say link building a little less. Digital PR is more of what we're communicating as well. Yeah, there's interesting shifts in it. Like, I just saw a data study on brand authority over domain authority. So we'll see if we'll start measuring that instead.
Digital PR link building has undoubtedly evolved since Siege's founding. Can you tell me what your take on its role as an SEO and content strategies now in 2024, especially in the world of AI?
Yeah, we're calling it product-led digital PR. It's sort of our most recent significant strategy shift. And our thought process there is getting, if they don't have it already, first-party data and putting it across the content ecosystem. Not just like one asset you promote, but if I have it, we have a data study on content marketing trends, and then we use that data across a blog post on what is link building. Like 63% of companies are using link building, just making that up. But that makes that piece more unique to us, differentiated in the world of AI. Claude or ChatGPT can't pump that out in 5 seconds. So doing that kind of data first stuff, that would be good independent of whether or not you did or SEO existed, and hopefully can truly build a brand. And that's a big part. And we're doing more spread out digital PR. We're not doing like 19 link building assets. It's like, what is one high leverage thing? Not always, but some people are more than that. But for us, it's like one big trends report a year. It just makes sense. And I think that does make sense for a lot of companies generally. So like, that's high leverage. Even if links didn't matter, that probably is worthwhile just from a brand building standpoint. So that's sort of what we're leaning into. While still thinking links matter, we're still kind of like do things that make that thoughtful, but it's more about, it's got to be really high leverage, it seems.
What are the requests coming in from the companies that you're speaking with? Is it still from like an SEO perspective, or is it more from a brand, or do you kind of have to educate them or re-educate?
Good question. I think my audience historically has been SEO people, which maybe is to our company's detriment. I'm sure it's helped. I do think we're transitioning over time to this idea of organic growth. Like, haven't truly given ourselves enough credit for referral traffic, direct traffic, especially to the content sections that we own. So we're doing more of that. I can't say that we're necessarily hearing that from clients necessarily, but they seem to be resonating with the kind of digital PR first party data approach that is working recently. So in terms of their problems, I mean, there's more volatility these days. I'm seeing more of that in sales. But yeah, that's some of the commonalities I guess I'm hearing from prospect. It has been harder for a while, but yeah, it seems like a lot of the panic is wafting away, I guess.
I saw on LinkedIn recently, it was a comment where you basically, I think you put like the 4 or 5 top assets on your own website that have done really, really well over time. And you even shared some of the results. Like, this blog post, we got 500 links. I only got a chance to see a couple of them, but were all of them first party type blog, like posts based on that?
Yes, that is the product led digital PR idea. So I was kind of saying it without saying it. We have it in our top currently. I think we'll keep it there for a couple of months. There's a post in our top navigation that says product led digital PR, or you could Google it, and it kind of speaks to it in more detail. But yes.
Do you feel like these days, can a site still rank well without an intentional PR link building effort?
I think you accelerate what you're doing using, like, at least thinking about it. Like, how we think about it is, we can identify that this topic, if you rank for it, attracts a lot of links. That's sort of how we're thinking about it for the most part. We're doing very, very little outreach still. We'll do high leverage outreach on the actual report, but that's like 5% of the time. Otherwise, it's more spread out. But links are a byproduct of like that good content marketing activity. So I think if it's one metric you look at, that if I rank for this, I will get a lot of links, I think that's still worthwhile to do. Do you need like guest posting outside of your website? I would say no. I don't think that sort of makes sense.
What do you say to the smaller companies? Because I know you deal with primarily larger organizations, but what could they do from a link building digital PR perspective?
Multi-tiered. One, we don't work with local, so I can't, besides multinational local or multi-location national, so I can't really well comment on that. I would guess maybe a little more of that would make sense for them still. What I am seeing, I think we're kind of lucky in this way as a company that you've probably seen, is that it's harder and harder to be small. It's like, I think the big companies are winning, and it's kind of tough to say like pack it up and go home on. But that is the case for some search, for some, like, especially affiliates. It's just like very hard to be a non-brand affiliate these days. But generally, I think it's a good activity. It's where you got to start if you feel like you have a great product that fits in the marketplace. If you're good for the niche and you're biggest in the niche, you can still be a small business in that vertical and be successful. It's like if you're up against IBM, you might be tough. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but some of those things come to mind.
No, I think it's very fair. I think it's a little sad in some ways, because I remember like pitching SEO at the concept, 10 years ago, and it was like, Google is the David and Goliath, right? You could be the David and come and be whatever you need to be on the SERPs, right? And fight those large companies. And I think it is harder these days to do that.
Yeah, I think it's getting harder and harder. I just emailed our business development guy, Drew, who's great, and was mentioning it feels like we need to be more discerning around product market fit than we ever have. Like, we would almost kind of walk into engagements, be like, they're 50 DR, domain authority or domain rating. And sometimes just being good enough there would feel good enough. But now I'm not as confident that even like decent authority matters if you're not a real brand.
It's hard, right? I would say for an agency, it's kind of like bringing it out, and maybe this is oversimplifying it, but yeah, it's tough. We get, leads our way, and you kind of want to make it work, but it's difficult because if you know that it's not going to be successful, or it's not going to work for your company, sometimes, on one hand, you need to pull in the revenue, but on the other hand, it's actually going to cost more. It's tough though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been with you there of that balance. When times are a little better, like things are starting to get better, we're lucky to be up market generally. So I think that helps. Like being more discerning feels critical, and there's probably a balance there. Like the bottom 20%, you gotta like it's probably worthwhile pushing on. Like if you can feel that even in 6 months' time, there's not going to be much results to show here. Like that's not going to be even. It's not. It doesn't feel like even a great short term justification, in my opinion. Yeah.
What are some of the most common SEO misconceptions that you're encountering these days with your clients? Or do you think people are educated already? They kind of know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard out there generally. I do think we still have conversations around AI. Like there's a segment of people like trying to pump it out with a button, and we're probably not the best fit for that person. So that I think that is an ongoing conversation with a lot of people. It's getting better because the fervor and excitement over it has kind of died down a little bit. It's still there, it's still useful, but I think that is probably the most common conversation around the value of high quality content. If that person has kind of a commodity AI mindset, they might be in the wrong place.
Are you adopting AI internally? Is it like a push? Guys, we have to figure out all the ways we can use it. Or is it more just natural coming in?
We do have someone who owns it. We're thinking about it actively. We use it for editing. We use it for qualitative checks, like a secondary SME, subject matter expert editor. Yeah, we're continuing it. We have like an AI department with one lead in each thing, but we're not forcing the issue. Like it's got to feel good for the thing. But I think it's important to like actively be practicing using it, or could get left behind. Yeah.
All right, we are going to move to our lightning round. I would love for you to tell me top 3 of something that you really like.
I mean, family is awesome. I have a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So that's a lot of fun. It's hard at the same time. Of course, my lovely wife, Mel, as well, is number 1 on that list. We do love traveling. We're wild enough to bring all of them with us. We're doing an SEO conference in Thailand in November. So please wish us a lot of luck for that one.
That's so cool.
Yeah, should be fun. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, love, sports. We talked about, I have a 49ers jersey behind me. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. Into basketball, I like playing basketball. I played basketball this morning. Wake up early just to play at 6 a.m., which is a lot of fun. Enjoy running, just like health. I think a lot about currently. That takes up a lot of energy, but kids take up most of it for sure.
Do you miss California or you like Texas?
I like Texas. We are lucky enough to spend a good amount of time in Bend, Oregon, where we have a vacation rental just to escape the summer here. So, but otherwise, lovely culture. People are nice. Food scene's great. Lots of things to do. I think winters and spring are amazing. It's nice to have sun and cold, which makes a big difference coming from Seattle, where that doesn't exist. But yeah.
So Ross, what is your next big project?
Next big project. I mean, raising kids is one on the business side. That's current big project, I would say, in terms of energy. But yeah, we're working on growing, and we might add some services over time. I think that's going to be a difficult endeavor. But yeah, thinking about expansion, potential acquisitions of other companies. I think that is a big North Star we're thinking about. So that's going to take a lot of energy.
But also really exciting.
Yeah, fun growth, things I haven't done before. And I think that's what still to this day gives me energy.
Super. So where can listeners learn more about you and your business?
Yeah, go to siegemedia.com, like Siege in the Castle. Hard to spell it, but we have the misspelling domain in case you mess it up. But Ross Hudgens on X/Twitter or LinkedIn as well. I post a lot there. I've been posting a little bit more on Threads as well. If anyone's out there, would love to connect.
Do you find it valuable? Threads.
Yeah, I'm honestly just reposting for the most part. It does seem like a different community than X a little bit, but it seemed to be building a little headway. So I felt like it was kind of misguided not to at least cross post. But I still transparently like X a little bit more, but it's slightly, I think they have gone the direction of like addiction social media, which is not necessarily a positive attribute.
No, definitely not. Well, Ross, thank you so much for joining me today. As I told you before, definitely have been following you and looking up to you. So it's awesome that we actually get a chance to speak. So thanks for being a guest on the Digital Marketing Mentor. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Digital Marketing Mentor. We'll speak with you next time.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Mentor podcast. Be sure to check us out online at thedmmentor.com and at the DM Mentor on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more marketing mentor magic. See you next time.